Hello, Mrs. Ontiveros. This is my final book presentation. Uh, the book I choose is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and the author is Yuval Noah Harari. First, I'm going to talk about the author, Yuval Noah Harari. He is a historian, philosopher, and author of the international bestseller *Sapiens*. Another book is *Brief History of Humanity*, Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow, and this book, The 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. His books, translated into 65 languages, have sold more than 35 million copies, and he is considered one of today's most influential public intellectuals. Harari, born in Israel in 1976. Harari received his PhD from Oxford University in 2002 and is currently a professor in the Department of History at the University of Jerusalem. In 2019, following the international success of his books, Yuval Noah Harari and his husband, Itzik Yahav, founded Sapienship. This is an organization focused on entertainment and education, whose mission is to encourage global conversation, highlight key challenges, and support the search of collective solutions. After unraveling our past and exploring our future, in 2018, Yuval Noah Harari published 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, a work in which he pauses to examine our present. He focuses his attention on the most transcendental questions of the present day. Where do we stand? What are the greatest challenges and decisions of our time? What should we pay more attention to? In its first year of publication, 5 million copies were sold worldwide, and it had already been translated into 60 languages. Harari lectures around the world on the topics covered in his books and writes articles from various media, such as The Guardian, the Financial Times, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, or Nature magazine. During 2020, he wrote several articles and gave numerous interviews on the global coronavirus crisis, discussing the implications of the pandemic on major news channels, such as CNN and BBC. Harari also lends his time and expertise to various organizations and audiences on a voluntary basis. Harari is an openly gay man. In 2002, upon returning from his doctorate at Oxford, he met his current partner and manager, Itzik Yahav, whom he calls my internet of all things. Harari, who says he is convinced of the benefits of vegan nutrition, lives with his husband in Karmel Yosef, a moshav near Jerusalem, and practices vipassana meditation. Harari is pro the Epicureanism. This ideal has as its basic signs of identity the distancing from the belief in gods, the absence of fear of death, the materialisms of the existing world, the reasonable satisfaction of pleasure without falling into desire of fear, and the practice of reason as a guide to knowledge. In his books, Harari exposes the evolution of the human being until reaching, in the present times, a privileged position that would force him to be consistent with his globalized and complex humanity, in which one of the few guides must be the open education, the abandonment of the partial and useless narratives of religion, also the nationalism, and many others. The fight against unnecessary individual and social pain, and the responsible assumption of the new biotechnological and bioinformatics challenges. The author explores the projects, dreams, and nightmares that will shape this 21st century, from overcoming death to the creation of artificial intelligence. Now I'm going to talk about the 21 lessons for this 21st century. Lesson 1, the disappointment of the technological world. Harari talks in this part of the book about how paradoxically, although technology has transformed our lives with various facilities and peace seemed to rule at the beginning of this 21st century, The truth is that we are facing an extremely frightening society. Harari states in this book that this confusion of ideas has allowed the rise of politicians with extreme positions. Many countries that practice liberalism and all its ideals of freedom are seeing the rise of separatist or hateful ideas. We are facing a completely disappointed and suspicious society, seeing that social networks are completely transforming the spread of hate speech. Then the second lesson is the author shows a great truth. No one knows what the labor market will be like in 10, 20, or 50 years. What we should keep in mind here is that it is useless to fight against the advancements of technology or to argue that people will lose jobs. This will not stop the process from happening. On the contrary, we must embrace technology strategically using the full power of artificial intelligence. Uh, then we come to the freedoms, the lesson three. Harari relates in his book many reasons why technology, especially artificial intelligence, is becoming more and more efficient. He says in one sentence, soon computer algorithms will be able to advise us better than human feelings. Yeah. Algorithms have much more information and can do much more efficient analysis than humans. But could their political and administrative decisions be better than the humans one? For now, there are no answers to this. Harari mentions that we are creating humans that are tame but maximize human potential. In fact, we know very little about the human mind. While research is focused on improving computers and algorithms, if we are not careful, we will end up with degraded humans who will misuse improved computers. For Harari, this could lead to chaos and freedom and the end of freedom and create the most unequal societies ever. Most people could suffer something worse than exploitation, irrelevance. Now, the fourth lesson talks about equality. Uh, the dominance that individuals or even entire nations exert over technology may make the world increasingly unequal. According to the author Yuval, it is possible that in the year 2100, having economic power will mean being able to invest in technologies that will make you more talented, smarter, or even stronger. In this same context, those who realize, I was saying that in this same context, those who already live in a situation of economic vulnerability will be increasingly distant from this process and will not have these technological advantages. Now we come to the lesson 5 of community. Joel says that we have never had a greater opportunity to form a large community and increase our chances of solving global challenges and problems together. However, although the internet and social networks can facilitate this process, the truth is that we have never been so alone. As the book points out, social networks are the main causes of the collapse of our sense of community. Their problem is that they prioritize the act of sharing experiences so much that they forget to encourage people to live what they are experiencing, which has led to segregation in many ways. Now I'll come to the next lesson. And the author Yuval says in his book that one of the great political challenges we face today is what some call the clash of civilization. He talks about radicalism has grown so much precisely because it communicates so well with the yearnings of youth and connects with global culture. Despite this and all the fear that these narratives may cause, the author argues that a major clash between different civilizations is highly unlikely. And now I'm going to talk about the seventh lesson, nationalism. As stated by Yuval in his book, patriotism itself is not a problem, but when it becomes a way of thinking like, I am proud of my country because it is supreme and must crush all others, it becomes one. Nations, private institutions, and even individuals can cooperate and create together creative technologies and solutions to the major problems we face globally. Nationalisms and selfishness do not help. Now, the lesson eight. Lesson eight about religion. There is not much that religiosity can do to solve the world's major political and social problems. Yuval Noah argues in his book the danger lies in the manipulation of religious precepts to justify an opinion or decision. This can even provoke war if it generates exaggerated nationalism. Now we come to the ninth lesson about immigration. It's an important part. Immigration is one of the great political issues of the 21st century. The immigration process, which takes millions of people from their country in search of a better life, is creating tensions that may worsen in the coming years. The stability of many countries, especially Europe, according to Yuval, may simply collapse in the face of the inability to accept the cultural differences of immigrants. This has generated anti-immigration ideas, stereotypes, and intolerance. In many ways, this can be dangerous and culminate in mass hysteria for fear of terrorism. Now we come to the 10th lesson uh, about terrorism. Talking about that. As explained in the book, terrorism escalates its own actions and purposely promotes fear to gain control of the situation. Terrorists hope to achieve their goals by encouraging countries to react extremely and make hasty, fear-based decisions. And that is all they can do because they have so little power that they could never enter a real world. Then I'm going to talk about the lesson 11, war. Winning a war in the past meant influencing an entire nation and becoming rich through it. This is what Yuval explains. Today, it is unlikely that sacking a country with all its material wealth would generate as much wealth. Companies like Apple are worth untold fortunes, but you can steal it by force and truck it to the winning country, as was the case in the past. Since the last Great War, any major combat is like declaring the extermination of an entire nation. This is due to atomic bombs, technology that is already accessible to several countries and can cause the destruction of immense areas, according to the book. Now we come to the 12th lesson about humility. The author, Yuval, states that human stupidity and arrogance is the cause of many mistakes and can even provoke war. The solution is to cultivate humility as a nation. We as individuals are not the center of the world, nor is our country. So we come to the 13th lesson. Harari, the 13 and 14 lessons. Harari mentions that another way to avoid human stupidity and encourage humility is to stop using God's names to process prejudice and segregation. Above all, we can learn from loving God by feeling more compassion, whether it is for our fellow countrymen or for someone in a vulnerable situation in other country. And the truth is that we don't have to be religious to act morally or to love others. And the proof that we don't need religious to follow morality is secularism. In other words, you don't need to start attending church to start exercising good moral values, says the author. Now we come to the lesson 15. Harari talks about how, although we read and consume as much content as possible about our political context, we will never know the full details or the absolute truth in the politics, as stated in the book. Knowing that we are ignorant ignorance prevents the reproduction of false discourses. Acknowledging one's ignorance means understanding. It is important to understand that no truth is absolute and there is always the other side of the coin. Next, the lesson 16. No, 16, yeah. It is about justice. The author, Harari, says that justice seems to be based on well-defined moral notions, but the problem arises when we realize that nothing is as obvious as it seems. Every action generates a sequence of various ramifications, which can be analyzed as both unjust and just, depending on how the situation is interpreted. And I'm agree with him. And then we come to the lesson 17 about post-truth. The lack of trust in traditional media is fertile ground for conspiracy theories and consequently fake news. Yeah, according to the book, the epidemic of fake news is not a recent occurrence. And what the long history of mankind shows us is that some fake news can last for a long time. Yeah, hundreds of years. It is important to doubt the information you hear and seek to learn more information about the subject for reliable sources that represent data and have a better scientific or historical basis. Then the lesson 18. Here, Harari talks about the humanity is driven by stories, fictional or not. We work very hard because we want to have money to maintain a lifestyle that we see on television or in TikTok or Instagram. In the 21st century, the fiction that can lead us to better ways is science fiction that can help us understand today's technological problems and creating the real world what we idealize in the fantasy world. This is what Harari states in this part of the book. Now we come to the 19th lesson about education. In this part of the book, Harari shows that the ability to analyze all the information available on the internet is of fundamental importance to prepare children for the future. In addition, the world is changing rapidly, and it seems that this process will happen faster and faster in the coming years. Our children need great flexibility and the ability to adapt to the scenarios that the world will create because we don't know what is going to happen. Then we come to the next lesson, the meaning of life. Many people need a great meaning for everything they live and that they will live. The way of most is to listen to the precepts of religious and grand ideals propagated by the groups. Well, it is possible to live a peaceful life as a religious person, but these beliefs preach many more chains and prisons than things we can actually do. Yuval says that the best thing you can do is to build your own meaning for life through self-knowledge and your own identity. Yes, this is my favorite part. Oh, and that's it. This is the last lesson about meditation. Harari says that meditation helps people better understand themselves and the context and nuances of the world, says author Yuval Noah Harari in his book. It is helpful to understand how your mind works and to understand what you need to do to make life meaningful to you. And that's it. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ontiveros. This is my final book presentation. I hope you enjoy it. Have a good afternoon.